Hello, Barbara here, and here's to your Oasis Thursday. And today's Oasis is spiritual maturity versus religious activity. Why going to church isn't the same as growing. This week, I was having this conversation with a few friends, and let me ask you a question. Have you ever met someone who's been in church for decades, but somehow still gets offended by everything, still struggles with forgiveness, still gossips, still treats people poorly, often is the victim in every story, and still hasn't changed at all? Now, let me make it more personal. Have you ever looked at your own life and wondered, I've been attending church faithfully, but am I actually growing? Because here's the truth. You can sit in the same pew every week. You can sing every worship song. You can know every scripture. You can serve on every ministry and still remain spiritually immature. Why, you ask? Because attendance is not transformation. We live in a world obsessed with metrics. We count our steps, our followers, our income, our achievements, who's on our side when we are morally corrupt. And sometimes we make the mistake of measuring our faith by how often we show up to church. But God isn't impressed by your attendance records. God examines hearts. The danger is that routine can become the perfect hiding place for a stagnant soul. It is easy to learn church language. It is easy to perfect the church smile. It is easy to look spiritual. But what's really hard is, are we allowing God to deal with our hearts? Because spiritual maturity asks uncomfortable questions. Questions like, am I actually becoming more patient? Have I simply learned how to hide my frustration? Do I genuinely love people, or do I just love being seen as a loving person? Why do I cry wolf every time I am close to being exposed? Would my character still reflect Christ if nobody knew I attended church? Those are the questions that expose the difference between performance and transformation. The Apostle Paul said in Galatians 6, verse 3-4, if anyone thinks they are something when they are not, they are deceiving themselves. Each one should test their own action. In other words, stop comparing yourself to everyone else. Look in the mirror. Test your own heart. Because religious activity without spiritual maturity produces bitter fruit. It creates people who know the rules but lack grace. People who are passionate about appearances but weak in compassion. People whose faith collapses when life gets difficult. But genuine spiritual maturity produces something completely different. It produces patience when you're frustrated, peace when everything around you is chaotic, kindness when nobody deserves it, humility, especially humility when you could easily prove you're right or expose the truth. The religious person behaves because they have to protect their reputation or image. The spiritual mature person behaves differently because God has transformed their heart. One is acting, the other one is becoming. Think about that. Now, before we say, well, if church attendance doesn't make me spiritual, then I'll just stay at home and worship God by myself. Let's talk about that, because that's not an answer. Church isn't the goal, but community is one of God's greatest tools for growth. You can't learn patience if nobody ever tests your patience. You can't learn forgiveness if nobody ever hurts you. You can't learn humility if you have never worked with difficult people. Growth happens in community. The gathering isn't the destination. It's the training ground. The problem isn't church. The problem is using church as a substitute for intimacy with God to change your heart. So here's the challenge for today. Don't stop going to church. Just stop confusing attendance with transformation. Stop trying to impress the people sitting next to you. Stop performing. Stop pretending. and invite God into the places you have been hiding. Because real growth doesn't happen when you change your schedule. Real growth happens when you allow God to change your heart. And when He changes your heart, your life will naturally follow. So today, ask yourself, am I simply active in religion, or am I actually becoming more like Christ? That's the difference. That's the invitation today. And that's where true transformation begins. Think about that. Allow true transformation to take over your whole mind, body, and soul. Have a great day on purpose, with purpose, while living in your entire purpose. Bye for now.